Hey friends, welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're cooking straight from the pantry because sometimes the best meals come from using what we already have. I've got a cozy tomato basil garlic bread that I made for Thanksgiving, 2 easy dinners, and simple waffles for breakfast. All made with ingredients that were just sitting in storage. As a mom of 2, I know how hectic life feels, and I want you to feel confident using what's on hand to feed your family well. Let's make some delicious meals together, so sit back, grab your coffee, and let's get cooking. Yesterday, I mixed and prepared the bread recipe that I'm taking to Thanksgiving this week. I am making a sourdough garlic herb wreath bread. It looks super pretty and like it's hard and fancy, but actually it's really easy to put together. So I prepared the dough last night. The recipe for the dough is linked in the description below. You can find it on my blog. But right now I'm going to be forming our wreath. So we want to flour our countertop first, that way the dough doesn't stick, and then we will roll out our dough onto our countertop. A couple tips I will give you for making this sourdough wreath bread is always make sure your butter is straight from the freezer when you go to make the dough. We're going to grate the butter right into our flour mixture. So we want to make sure we have cold butter because that is what gives you that tender, flaky texture that makes everyone think you spent hours on it, when in reality, you did not. Once the dough comes together, don't skip chilling it. I know it's tempting to keep going, but keeping the dough cold really helps it hold its shape later. It just makes the whole wreath shaping moment so much easier and less sticky. Also, with this being sourdough, you get those healthy fermentation benefits, the gut health benefits from fermenting overnight, so don't skip letting it ferment overnight. For the filling, I'm doing a light layer of tomato paste and basil. If you love a strong tomato flavor, you could definitely use dried tomatoes instead, but if you're using the paste like me, spread it super thin, just enough for flavor without making the dough soggy. And then how I seasoned this was you want 4 tablespoons of melted butter, 3 cloves minced garlic, 2 teaspoons thyme, 2 teaspoons dried basil, and we will mix all of the dried seasonings, the garlic in with the melted butter, and then we're gonna spread a really good coating all over the top of our tomato paste layer. And I do like to leave a little bit extra in the bowl, and then once we've shaped our wreath, we pour the rest of it over top, so you have the basil and garlic on the top of the crust too, not just on the inside. So once we're ready to form our bread into a wreath, we want to roll it into a log. So kind of like you're making cinnamon rolls, roll it up, and then we're going to leave an inch or inch and a half gap at the top that we're not going to cut. And then from that inch and a half, we're going to cut straight down the middle, and then we will braid our 2 pieces of dough back and forth until we're done at the bottom, and we'll pull it up into a circle so we get that wreath shape. I wanted this to be super fresh, so I decided to cover the wreath. I put it in a cast iron pan, but I covered it with plastic wrap, threw it in the fridge, and then Thursday morning, so Thanksgiving morning, took it out of the fridge and preheated my oven to 375 degrees, and then took the plastic wrap off and baked the bread that morning because I wanted it to be nice and fresh for Thanksgiving Day. And I will say it turned out fantastic. Look how delicious this looks. I loved it. Everybody loved it. And you can find the recipe on my blog at ourfamilycooks.com or linked in the description below. Our toddler decided that she wanted waffles this morning for breakfast, so waffles it is. And I am making my favorite way to have waffles. Made these and mentioned these a lot on my channel, but they are cottage cheese sourdough discard waffles. Absolutely delicious and adds a little bit of extra protein in there with the cottage cheese. So to make these, we need 1.5 cups all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons honey, 1/2 teaspoon salt, 1 teaspoon baking soda, 2 teaspoons baking powder, 1 cup sourdough discard, 2 large eggs, 1 cup milk, 1 cup cottage cheese, and 3 tablespoons of melted butter. I love that just one square of these waffles has about 6.5 grams of protein. So that's really good. Obviously you want more than that in your breakfast, but we always make sausage links or scrambled eggs to go along with it so you can have a little extra added protein on top of the waffles. We are living in a snow globe today. I am going to show you what it looks like out my front door, but it is so gorgeous. It snowed through the night and it is supposed to snow all day long, and I am absolutely loving it. I'm curious if you were also impacted by this massive snowstorm that went through over Thanksgiving weekend. Let me know in the comments. Since we are snowed in for the day, I figured I would go back in my recipe book and revisit a recipe that I haven't made in a couple years now. It's a cheesy broccoli and wild rice casserole, and I always add chicken, but I just felt like it would be a nice warm meal that we could have on this really cold, snowy day. First up, I'm going to measure my rice to get that going on the stove. So I'm measuring 2 cups of uncooked white rice. I typically do use wild rice for this recipe, but I don't have that and I'm not leaving the house to go to the store. So we're just going to use regular long grain white rice for this recipe today. And then I'm going to rinse it off in the sink first before we start to cook it. And then I typically use water to cook my rice in, but I want more flavor for our rice today. So I'm actually going to use the rest of my chicken stock that I have in this container. It came out to be about 2.5 cups. And then I just added 1.5 more cups of water. So total of 2 cups uncooked rice and then 4 cups of my liquid base. So this chicken stock will just add some extra nice flavor to our rice. Another thing I'm going to get going is our broccoli. So this is raw, fresh broccoli that I got from the store yesterday and chopped up. And we're just going to throw it in our steamer. I minced up about 3 to 4 cloves of fresh garlic. I absolutely love garlic in recipes, so I always go for more versus less, but you can adjust it to whatever your guys' preference is. Our chicken broth and water are done boiling, so we're going to add in our rice, and I make sure to lower the heat. You don't want the rice to be boiling in the water. Just want it to be on, I put it to level 1 to where it's just simmering and cooking the rice for low and slow for 15 minutes. While our rice is cooking, I'm going to add our stock pot to the oven and get that heated up so we can work on our cheesy base while the broccoli and rice is cooking. I tend to get intimidated by recipes when there are a lot of steps or a lot of ingredients. It just seems, I don't know, intimidating for some reason, even though I know what I'm doing, but just having to reread a recipe multiple times can be intimidating sometimes, but it's really not so bad. So this next step, we melt 4 tablespoons of butter in our stock pot, and then we just cook our onions and garlic in there, let those simmer and get translucent, and then add about a tablespoon of all-purpose flour to make our roux, and then 1 cup milk, and we add all of our cheeses. So we've got cream cheese, cheddar cheese, and an important thing about adding in milk or cheese, any sort of dairy, is you do not want it to be boiling because then it will curdle. So I did turn this down on a low temperature to make sure that we don't curdle our milk and our cheeses. Once you stir everything together really nicely, the cheeses are all melted and blended. I am using canned chicken, so I want to add some protein to this. So I've got a can of chicken. If you want to use rotisserie chicken, any sort of diced up chicken, or even your leftover Thanksgiving turkey, you can do that as well, just to add a little protein in here. After the chicken gets added, it's really easy. We will throw in our cooked broccoli, and I was thinking I needed 2 cups of uncooked rice, but definitely don't need that much rice. So I only used 2 cups of cooked rice, threw that in the pot, stirred it all together, and then we're going to throw it in my 9x13 baking dish, sprinkle some delicious shredded cheddar cheese over the top, and then I'm gonna set it in our fridge for a couple hours until we're ready to eat it. It only takes 20 to 30 minutes in the oven just to get everything nice and melted and heated all the way through. And another tip, something that I did, I used the broiler function this time to really get that cheese on the top that I shredded nice and melty and almost not burning it, but just making it crispy. So make sure to turn your broiler on the last 2 minutes of baking, just 2 minutes, and it will give you a perfect crispy cheesy crust. Real quick, gotta show you an update of the snow. It is still snowing about 5 hours later. Since I made an overabundance of rice yesterday for our cheesy broccoli casserole, I had to think of an idea on what can we make that I don't have to go to the store for and can easily just whip up at night without a ton of prep. So I looked in my fridge and my deep freeze, and we've got this really good apple Gouda sausages. It's kind of like Andouille sausage links, but it's an apple Gouda. I love it. I buy it at Costco and it tastes fantastic. So I am going to make this Andouille sausage casserole that I made a year ago, and I honestly have not made it since, but it is so good and so easy. All you have to do is take your large stock pot or Dutch oven, add some oil, 1 to 2 tablespoons oil, and then add in bell peppers and onions. We're going to saute those until they're translucent and nice and soft, and then cut up all of your sausage. This is also chicken sausage. You can use whatever kind of sausage links you want. I love these chicken ones, but again, use whatever you have. And we're gonna chop these up into coin sizes. Make sure if you have small little eaters that you cut them up into smaller pieces for them. But anyways, after all of our veggies and onions are done sauteing, we will add our chicken sausage in with them, and also we'll add a bunch of seasonings. The seasonings I decided to use today are, one of them is this new seasoning mix that we got at Costco. Haha, go figure, we get everything at Costco. But it's a butter garlic seasoning, and it is so good. We've been adding it to mashed potatoes, and just really anything because we love butter and garlic. So I am adding a bunch of that in here, probably about a teaspoon. And then I also did about a teaspoon of thyme, half teaspoon of rosemary, and 1 to 2 teaspoons of oregano. And this turned out so delicious. I love just adding lots of different seasonings and making sure our food tastes very flavorful. And then I also put in salt and pepper. So don't forget salt and pepper. And those I just did a bunch of sprinkles, probably a teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of pepper. But yeah, it makes it so delicious. I will have the recipe for this casserole linked in the description below. It's super easy to whip up, only 4 or 5 ingredients, something you can definitely do on a weeknight when you don't have a lot of time to prep. The rice would take a little longer, so it is nice that I already had this rice in our fridge, but it's a great one if you make like chicken and wild rice soup or something else where you're using a lot of rice and you have leftovers. Just throw this one together. It's got your veggies, it's got your protein, and then it's got the carbs. So well-rounded meal altogether. And that's everything for today. I hope you guys have a wonderful holiday season, and make sure to like and subscribe and come back for more. Thank you.